Hi guys, I am very excited because we have a very special guest this evening who's going to be on the live with us. If you are a parent who has struggled with being bitter to your kids, you are a parent who has struggled on raising your voice, have raised your hand on your child, or if you are someone who's constantly finding it so hard to constantly work around how to make your child listen, right? I think we all struggle with that, especially if you have a teenage or I almost have one. You will start realizing that it's getting harder and harder to communicate to your children, right? And that is exactly what we are talking about today, and I think it is a very important part. And I have felt this through the lockdown and through this pandemic where we're all cocooned in this one house, which is on how, one, do you communicate so your children listen? How do you be a better parent? How do you ensure that what you are trying and how you're communicating is very effective for your child? And of course, most important, that you're not being the parent you don't want to be, because you have the pressures of so many things that you really want. You're just trying to do so much at the same time that there is a time where you will snap, you will feel horrible, you will shout at your kids, and you will do all of those things that you don't want to do. But how can you really avoid doing that? So if that is your struggle, then you're absolutely going to love this session. With me today, we're going to have Shubha Vilasji. Shubha Vilasji, thank you so much. I was just telling everybody that I don't know how you are always on time. You're always radiating. You're always so full of energy. You're so prompt with your replies. Like before everything else, I need to learn time management from you.
Thank you, Mansi ji, for having me here on this extremely beautiful and amazing platform that you've created.
Right.
And I am honored and happy to be sharing whatever I can to make Kidsstoppress something better and more valuable to everyone who is here.
That child is going to be a product of what you've nurtured him with, right? And it's so easy for us to label our children. ऐसा, matlab, literally, like, we put stickers on them. She's very driven. She's an optimistic. She's very sensitive. Or she's a tantrum thrower. Or, she's average. I feel somewhere, and I struggle this with myself as well. I feel like we're constantly labeling people, potential, abilities. How do you, as a parent, not do that and do that very consciously?
Understand the concept of parenting and the concept of taking care of children is, let me tell you statistics, and this is a shocking statistics. By the time a child is 14 years of age, the child has heard 1,48,000 times, "You can't, you shouldn't, don't do this." So basically, 1,48,000 times on an average, a child has heard, "You can't do this, you shouldn't do this, don't do this." So imagine the impact that you're causing in a child's mind, that so many times a negative impact, that you can't, you can't, you can't. So usually the language of life is a very positive language. The language of life, if you actually observe nature, nature speaks a very positive language. But human beings, unfortunately, have a tendency to speak very negative language. Small things like a bumblebee. Bumblebees are very heavy bees. If you have seen those bumblebees, and they have very small wings. Aeronautically, if a scientific exploration is carried out, technically, from a scientific point of view, bumblebees should not be able to fly. But fortunately, bumblebees don't know these scientific researches. They're still flying. If somehow human beings find a way to communicate to these bumblebees that you're not supposed to fly, they'll be sitting in one corner. So a lot of our children are like these bumblebees. A lot of our children have great potentials of life. If you explore some of the biggest achievers in history of mankind, as children, they've been labeled as duffers. They've been labeled as useless. Whether you take Winston Churchill, whether you take Albert Einstein, whether you take Edison, you take any of these people, in their childhood, they have been labeled. But fortunately, they have had mothers who didn't tell them about their labels, but rather encouraged them about their potential. You study the life of Michael Jordan. when he was young in school, and his school teacher, his coach, rejected him from the school basketball team. He went back home and he was crying. His mother told him, "Go back and discipline yourself." His mother didn't tell him a negative language that you can't do it. Forget this game. She gave him the positive language of life. So the whole idea is, the more as parents we give the children the positive language of life, which is the language that they can thrive in, that's when they grow. That's when they achieve their full potential. But unfortunately, when we give them the negative language of life, we can't. You actually, bring them down. Consciously or unconsciously, we bring them down. A lot of times, as parents, we tend to be overprotective of our children. And in the desire to be overprotective, we risk having a child that doesn't achieve his full potential. We want to protect the child, but in the process of trying to protect the child, we actually disempower the child.